Have you ever wondered what it would be like to see past someone's carefully constructed armor straight into their wounded soul? To recognize the man beneath the monster, the heart beneath the ice? Naomi Clarke was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous men need love the most desperately, and sometimes the safest choice is the one that terrifies you. This is her story. The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon and shadow. Naomi Clarke pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, cursing herself for not checking the weather before leaving the rehabilitation center where she worked as a physical therapist. Her natural hair, usually protected under a silk scarf, was getting soaked despite her efforts to shield it with her bag. The hospital where she worked was only 6 blocks from her apartment, a distance she normally walked without thinking. But tonight, with the storm unleashing its fury and the streets nearly empty, those 6 blocks felt like 6 miles. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she hurried down the sidewalk, her breath coming in visible puffs in the cold air. She was so focused on avoiding the deepest puddles that she didn't see the man until she crashed directly into him. The impact was solid, like running into a wall of muscle and expensive fabric. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she could fall backward onto the wet pavement. Naomi looked up, water streaming down her face, and found herself staring into the most intense pair of gray eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that was somehow still perfectly styled despite the rain. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, and there was something about the way he carried himself that spoke of power and danger in equal measure. But it was his eyes that held her frozen, storm gray and burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm so sorry," Naomi gasped, stepping back. "I wasn't watching where I was going." The man's hands lingered on her shoulders for just a moment longer than necessary before he released her. His gaze swept over her face with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Are you hurt?" His voice was deep, with the faintest trace of an Italian accent that made something warm unfurl in her chest despite the cold. "No, I'm fine. Just wet and embarrassed." She managed a small laugh, tucking a soaked curl behind her ear. "I should have been more careful." He studied her for a long moment, and Naomi felt strangely exposed under that penetrating stare. It was as if he could see straight through her, cataloging every detail with predatory precision. Then his expression shifted slightly, something almost soft entering those hard eyes. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "Not in this neighborhood, not at this hour." Naomi glanced around, suddenly aware of how empty the streets were. They were standing in an alley between 2 buildings, the kind of shortcut locals took without thinking. But now, seeing it through this stranger's eyes, she realized how vulnerable her position was. "I only live a few blocks away," she said, trying to sound confident. "I walk this road every day. That doesn't make it safe." He reached into his jacket, and for one heart-stopping moment, Naomi thought he was reaching for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a sleek black umbrella and opened it in one smooth motion. "At least take this." Before she could protest, he was holding the umbrella over her head, shielding her from the worst of the rain. The gesture was so unexpectedly gallant that Naomi found herself speechless. "I can't take your umbrella," she finally managed. "You'll get soaked." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I've survived worse than rain, Piccola." The endearment rolled off his tongue like honey. "Please, humor me." There was something in his tone that made arguing feel pointless. Naomi accepted the umbrella handle, her fingers briefly brushing against his. Even through the cold and wet, she felt the heat of his skin, the calluses that spoke of a life very different from her own. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's very kind." I'm rarely kind. The words were matter of fact, almost warning. But I make exceptions for beautiful women caught in storms. Heat flooded Naomi's cheeks despite the cold. She wasn't used to such direct compliments, especially not from men who looked like they'd stepped out of some dangerous fairy tale. I'm Naomi, she offered, not quite sure why she was giving her name to this intense stranger. Dante. He said it simply, as if his name didn't carry weight, as if he were just any man on any street corner. But Naomi sensed there was nothing ordinary about Dante. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naomi, even under these wet circumstances. They stood there for a moment, rain pounding on the umbrella above them, the rest of the world fading into the background. Then Dante's attention shifted, his entire body going still in a way that made every nerve in Naomi's body scream danger. Naomi, he said quietly, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that for me? Her heart began to pound. What's wrong? Don't turn around. Don't make any sudden movements. His hand moved to the small of her back, a touch that was both protective and proprietary. There are 3 men behind you, and they're not here for the scenery. Fear spiked through Naomi's chest. She fought the instinct to look over her shoulder, keeping her eyes locked on Dante's face instead. His expression had transformed from the almost gentle stranger to something cold and lethal. What do we do? She whispered. You stay close to me. His hand pressed more firmly against her back. And you trust that I won't let anything happen to you. Before Naomi could respond, a voice called out from behind them. Rossi! Didn't expect to find you out for a romantic stroll. The name hit Naomi like a physical blow. Rossi. Dante Rossi. She'd heard that name whispered in the hospital corridors, in the shops she frequented, in the darker corners of the city's collective consciousness. Dante Rossi was one of the most powerful and feared men in the Italian Mafia, a man whose reputation was built on violence and ruthless efficiency. And she had just crashed into him in the rain. Dante's hand remained steady on her back as he turned slightly, positioning himself between Naomi and the approaching threat. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of absolute authority. Marcello, I suggest you and your friends find somewhere else to be. That's not very friendly, Rossi. The voice was closer now, and Naomi could smell alcohol and cigarettes on the air. We just want to talk. I'm not in a talking mood. Dante's tone was deceptively soft, but Naomi could feel the coiled violence in his body. Walk away. Now. See? That's the thing. Marcello was right behind them now. The Esposito family has some questions about that shipment that went missing last week, and we think you might have answers. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, everything exploded into chaos. Dante moved with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for a man his size. He spun, pushing Naomi behind him with one hand, while his other hand connected with something that made a sickening crack. Someone screamed. Metal flashed in the dim light. Run! Dante's voice cut through the confusion. Naomi, run! But Naomi's body wouldn't obey. She stood frozen, umbrella still clutched in her hand, as Dante fought off 3 men with brutal efficiency. His movements were precise, economical, each strike calculated to disable rather than showboat. This wasn't the wild flailing of a street fight. This was the controlled violence of someone trained to kill. One of the attackers pulled a knife. Naomi's scream finally broke free as the blade slashed toward Dante's chest. He twisted, the knife catching his jacket instead of flesh, and delivered a vicious elbow to the man's temple. The attacker crumpled. The remaining 2 men seemed to reconsider their odds. They backed away slowly, hands raised in surrender. Tell Esposito, Dante said, his breathing barely elevated despite the fight. That if he wants to talk, he knows where to find me. But if he sends anyone else to threaten me or mine, I'll return them in boxes. The men fled into the rain, leaving their unconscious companion behind. Dante turned back to Naomi, and she saw something flicker across his face. Concern, maybe even fear. It humanized him in a way that the violence couldn't erase. "Are you hurt?" He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides, his hands running over her arms and shoulders with surprising gentleness. "Did they touch you?" "I'm fine." Naomi's voice shook. "I should have run. I'm sorry, I froze. I couldn't." "Shh." His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away rain or tears. She wasn't sure which. "You did nothing wrong. This is my world, not yours. You shouldn't have been exposed to this." "Your world." Naomi repeated the words, reality crashing back in. "You're Dante Rossi. The Dante Rossi." Something painful crossed his face. "Yes. I should go." She took a step back, but her legs were shaking so badly she stumbled. Dante caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist with that same contradictory combination of strength and care. "You're in shock. You can't walk home like this." "I'm fine," she insisted, even as her body betrayed her words by trembling against him. "You're not fine." His voice was firm but gentle. "And I'm not letting you walk home alone, not after what just happened. My car is around the corner. Let me drive you." Every rational part of Naomi's brain screamed at her to refuse, to run far away from this dangerous man and his dangerous world. But another part, a part that had felt his protective touch and seen the concern in his eyes, made her nod. Okay. Dante's car was a black Mercedes sedan that probably cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne, the seats heated to combat the rain's chill. Dante started the engine and pulled away from the curb with practiced ease, his hands steady on the wheel despite having just been in a knife fight. "Where do you live?" he asked. Naomi gave him the address, then sat in silence as they drove through the rain-soaked streets. She should feel terrified. She had just witnessed a man being knocked unconscious. She was sitting in a car with one of the city's most notorious crime lords, but instead of fear, she felt strangely safe. "I'm sorry you saw that," Dante said after a long moment. "You shouldn't have been involved." "It wasn't your fault." The words came out automatically, then she paused. "Actually, was it your fault? Did you really steal their shipment?" To her surprise, Dante laughed. It was a low, rich sound that did strange things to her insides. "Yes, I did. But they deserved it. The Esposito family has been trafficking women from Eastern Europe. When I found out, I intercepted their shipment and freed the women. That's what this is really about. Not money, not territory. They're angry that I disrupted their human trafficking operation." Naomi studied his profile in the dim light of passing street lamps. "So, you're a thief who fights human trafficking?" "I'm a lot of things, Naomi. Most of them bad. But even monsters have limits." He glanced at her, those gray eyes intense in the darkness. "I don't hurt innocents. Ever." They pulled up in front of her apartment building, a modest structure in a working-class neighborhood. Dante looked at the building with an expression she couldn't read. "This isn't a safe area," he said. "It's what I can afford." Naomi reached for the door handle. "Thank you for the ride. And for everything." Dante's hand shot out, catching her wrist gently. "Wait." She turned back, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I need to know you're safe," he said. "Those men saw you with me. They might try to use you to get to me." Fear spiked through her chest again. What are you saying? I'm saying you may be in danger because of me. His jaw clenched. I'm saying I should walk away and never see you again. That's the smart thing, the safe thing for you. But, Naomi whispered, but I can't stop thinking that if something happened to you because of me, I'd burn this entire city to the ground. The confession came out raw and honest. Give me your phone. Naomi handed it over without thinking. Dante entered his number and called himself, his own phone buzzing in his pocket. If anything feels wrong, if anyone approaches you, if you even think you might be in danger, you call me immediately. He handed her phone back. Promise me. I promise. She saved his number, her fingers trembling slightly, but I'll probably never need it. Dante's smile was sad. I hope you're right, Piccola. I truly do. He walked her to her door despite the rain, waiting until she was safely inside before returning to his car. Naomi watched from her window as the Mercedes pulled away, disappearing into the storm. Only then did she realize she still had his umbrella. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the fight replaying. The violence, yes, but also Dante's protective stance. The way he'd positioned himself between her and danger without hesitation. The gentleness in his hands despite the brutal efficiency of his fighting. She knew she should be terrified, should be planning to move, to change her routine, to avoid any possibility of crossing paths with Dante Rossi again. But instead, she found herself touching her phone, her thumb hovering over his number and her contacts. Around 2 a.m, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that she somehow knew was him. Are you safe? Naomi stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Yes. Can't sleep, but I'm safe. You? The response came quickly. The same. I keep thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't been there. But you were there. This time. But I can't be everywhere, Naomi. My world is dangerous. You should stay far away from me. She should agree. Should thank him for the warning and block his number. Instead, she typed, what if I don't want to stay away? The pause was longer this time. When her phone rang, instead of buzzing with a text, her heart jumped. You don't know what you're saying. Dante's voice was rough, like he'd been drinking or hadn't slept in days. I'm not a good man. You saved me, Naomi countered, pacing her small apartment. You protected me from those men. You made sure I got home safely. Those aren't the actions of a bad man. I also broke someone's jaw, possibly his skull. His laugh was bitter. I've killed people, Naomi. More than I can count. I've done things that would keep you awake at night if you knew the details. Why are you trying so hard to push me away? The silence stretched between them, broken only by their breathing on opposite ends of the line. When Dante finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because you're the first truly good thing I've encountered in years, and I'm terrified of what my darkness might do to your light. Naomi's chest tightened. She sat down on her couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. What if your darkness doesn't scare me? Then you're not as smart as I thought you were. But there was something almost tender in his tone. Go to sleep, Piccola. In the morning, this will all seem like a strange dream. You'll forget about the dangerous man you met in the rain. I don't think I will. The admission felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff. I don't think I can. Another long pause. God help us both. Dante's voice was rough with emotion. Because I don't think I can forget you either. They talked until dawn painted her windows gold and pink. Dante told her about growing up in Sicily, about losing his mother at 8 years old, about being raised by an uncle who taught him that power was the only thing that mattered. He didn't spare himself in the telling, didn't try to make his choices sound noble or justified. In turn, Naomi told him about her work at the rehabilitation center, about the patients she helped regain their mobility after injuries and surgeries. She told him about growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to put her through college, about the scholarship that made her degree possible, about the satisfaction of helping people heal. As the sun rose, Dante said something that made Naomi's breath catch. "You make me want to be better than I am." "Maybe you already are," she replied softly. "Maybe you just need someone to see it." When they finally hung up, Naomi felt exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. She knew she should be afraid, should recognize this for the dangerous obsession it was becoming. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the way Dante had looked at her in the rain, like she was precious, like she was worth protecting, like she mattered. Over the next 2 weeks, Dante became a constant presence in Naomi's life, though never physically. They texted throughout the day, her messages brightening his darkness, his responses making her smile during long shifts at the hospital. They talked every night, conversations that stretched for hours, covering everything from philosophy to favorite foods to childhood dreams. Naomi learned that Dante spoke 4 languages, that he'd studied art history in college before his uncle's death pulled him into the family business, that he played piano when he needed to. Think. Dante learned that Naomi sang in her church choir, that she made the best sweet potato pie in the city according to her neighbors, that she dreamed of opening her own rehabilitation center someday to serve underprivileged communities. "I could help with that," Dante said one night. "I have the resources to make that dream real for you." "I can't take your money," Naomi protested. "That would be wrong." "Why? Because of where it comes from?" His voice was careful. "I told you what I am, Naomi. I won't pretend to be something else." "It's not judgment," she said honestly. "It's just, I need to do this on my own, to know I built something through my own work. I respect that." And somehow she could hear the smile in his voice. "But when you're ready to expand, to grow beyond what one person can build alone, remember that I believe in you, and my money can do good things in the right hands." 2 weeks after their first meeting, Dante finally asked the question Naomi had been both hoping for and dreading. "Have dinner with me. A real date, not just phone calls in the dark." Her heart raced. "Dante, I know all the reasons you should say no." His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable in a way she'd never heard before. "I know I'm dangerous. I know my world could hurt you, but I can't stop thinking about you, Naomi. I dream about your laugh. I find myself smiling at my phone like a teenager when you text. You've somehow become essential to me, and I don't know what to do with that." "Where would we go?" She was stalling, trying to think through the implications. "Somewhere private, safe, where we can just be 2 people getting to know each other without the weight of who I am or what I do." "Your house?" The suggestion felt bold, dangerous. "If you're comfortable with that." Dante paused. "I'll send a car for you. My driver, Marco, has been with me for 20 years. You'll be completely safe." "When?" "Tomorrow night, if you're free." She could hear the hope in his voice. "Say yes, Piccola. Let me cook for you. Let me see your face when you laugh instead of just hearing it through the phone." Naomi closed her eyes, knowing she was about to make either the best or worst decision of her life. "Okay. Yes. Tomorrow night." The relief in Dante's exhale was palpable. "You won't regret this." "I hope you're right." The next evening, Naomi spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready. She changed outfits 4 times before settling on a deep burgundy dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow. She wore her natural hair in defined curls that framed her face and kept her makeup simple but polished. When Marco arrived driving a sleek black sedan, she felt her nerves kick into overdrive. Dante's house was in the hills overlooking the city, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone that somehow managed to feel warm despite its size. As the car pulled up the winding driveway, Naomi saw Dante waiting on the front steps. He wore dark jeans and a simple white shirt, the first time she'd seen him in something other than a suit. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered, and the expression on his face when he saw her made her breath catch. "Naomi." He opened her door himself, offering his hand to help her out. "You're stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself." She accepted his hand, trying to ignore how perfectly her fingers fit in his. Dante led her inside, and Naomi was immediately struck by the warmth of the space. She'd expected something cold and intimidating, but instead found a home filled with art and books and comfortable furniture. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, and the scent of cooking garlic and herbs made her mouth water. "You're really cooking?" She followed him to the kitchen, a chef's dream of stainless steel and marble. "I told you I would." Dante pulled out a stool at the massive island. "Sit, watch, and tell me if I'm doing this wrong." Over the next hour, Naomi watched Dante move through his kitchen with the same confidence and precision he'd shown during the fight in the alley. He prepared fresh pasta from scratch, the movements of his hands hypnotic as he kneaded and rolled the dough. The kitchen filled with the scent of flour and eggs, a homey warmth that seemed at odds with his dangerous reputation. "My mother taught me this recipe when I was 6 years old," Dante said, his hands working the dough with practiced ease. "She'd stand me on a chair next to the counter, and we'd make pasta together every Sunday. She said that a man who can feed himself will never be helpless. That cooking is an act of love for yourself and others." Naomi watched the tender expression on his face, seeing past the hard exterior to the boy who'd learned at his mother's side. "What was she like?" Dante paused, flour dusting his fingers as memories played across his features. "Beautiful. Kind. She had this laugh that could light up a whole room. She believed in old traditions, in family dinners and Sunday Mass and taking care of the people you love." His voice roughened with emotion. "She would have loved you." "Why do you say that?" "Because you're like her." He resumed kneading, his movements methodical and soothing. "You see the good in people. You dedicate your life to healing. You have that same quiet strength she had, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself to be powerful." "How did she die?" Naomi asked gently. Dante's hands stilled. For a long moment he was quiet, and Naomi thought perhaps she'd pushed too far. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Cancer. It was aggressive, spread faster than anyone expected. One day she was fine, laughing and making Sunday dinner. 6 months later, she was gone." He looked up, meeting Naomi's eyes. "I was 8 years old, and I watched her waste away while my father threw money at every specialist in Europe. None of it mattered. Money couldn't save her." "That's when you went to live with your uncle." "My father couldn't handle losing her. He basically checked out, started drinking, gambling, making bad deals. My uncle Salvatore stepped in, took over raising me." Dante's expression hardened slightly. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't soft either. "He taught me that emotions were weaknesses, that attachments made you vulnerable, that the only thing you could count on in this world was power and the willingness to use it." Naomi reached across the counter, covering his flour-dusted hand with hers. "But your mother taught you something different." "She did." His fingers turned, lacing through hers. "She taught me about love and kindness and the importance of caring for others. For a long time, I thought those lessons died with her. Then I met you, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want to be gentle. He resumed preparing the pasta with renewed focus, rolling the dough through the machine with practiced precision. As he worked, he told her stories about his mother, how she sang while she cooked, always off key, but with such joy it didn't matter. How she insisted on feeding every stray dog in the neighborhood. How she'd read to him every night before bed, fantastical stories of heroes and dragons and impossible quests. She used to tell me that everyone has the capacity for both darkness and light, Dante said, as he cut the pasta into perfect ribbons. She said the choice we make every day is which one we feed. I've been feeding the darkness for so long, Naomi. Being with you makes me want to choose differently. While the pasta cooked, Dante prepared a sauce with tomatoes from his garden, fresh basil, garlic, and a splash of wine. The kitchen filled with mouth-watering aromas that made Naomi's stomach growl embarrassingly loud. Dante laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Patient, Piccola? Good food can't be rushed. My grandmother used to say the same thing, Naomi said, smiling at the memory. She'd spend all day Sunday cooking, and we weren't allowed to even peek in the pots. She said food made with patience tastes like love. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. Still is, actually. She's 83 and still cooks Sunday dinner for the whole family. Naomi watched Dante plate the pasta with artistic precision. She'd probably like you, despite everything. Why do you say that? Because she always told me to look past what people do to understand why they do it. She said hurt people, but that doesn't mean they can't heal. Naomi accepted the plate Dante handed her, the pasta looking like something from a 5-star restaurant. She'd see you the way I do, as someone who's been through pain but hasn't let it destroy your capacity for goodness. The food was incredible, each bite perfectly seasoned and cooked. The pasta was tender but not mushy, the sauce rich with the sweetness of San Marzano tomatoes and the brightness of fresh basil. They ate at the island rather than the formal dining room, their knees occasionally brushing, the casual intimacy more powerful than any grand gesture. Between bites, they continued talking. Dante told her about his art history studies, how he'd wanted to be a curator before his uncle's death forced him to take over the family business. He spoke about the paintings he collected, mostly Renaissance pieces that reminded him of his mother's love of beauty and culture. Naomi shared her own dreams, talking about the rehabilitation center she wanted to build, specialized programs she wanted to develop for underserved communities. She told him about her favorite patients, the elderly woman who'd regained the ability to walk after a stroke, the young athlete who'd recovered from a career-ending injury to compete again. You give people their lives back, Dante said, his gray eyes intense on her face. That's a kind of power more valuable than anything I've built. It's different power, Naomi corrected. Not better or worse, just different. You protect people, I heal them. Both matter. You're too generous with me. Dante reached across the counter, tucking a curl behind her ear. Most people in your position would judge what I do, would be horrified by the violence of my world. I'm not most people. Naomi leaned into his touch. And you're more than the worst things you've done, Dante. We all are. Tell me something you've never told anyone else, Dante said as they finished their pasta. Naomi considered the question. Sometimes I'm afraid that I'm not doing enough, that working at one hospital, helping one patient at a time, isn't making a real difference. The problems are so big, and I'm just one person. You're helping people walk again, Naomi. You're giving them their lives back. That's not small. Dante's hand covered hers on the counter. The world tries to convince us that only grand gestures matter, but sometimes the most profound impact comes from consistent daily acts of care. What about you? She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. What's something you've never told anyone? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I'm tired. Not physically, but tired of being the monster everyone expects me to be. Tired of the violence, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that I can't trust anyone completely because trust gets you killed in my world. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Until you. For some inexplicable reason, I trust you. And that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced. Why does it terrify you? Because trust creates vulnerability, and vulnerability in my world is a weapon that people will use against you. His grip on her hand tightened. But I can't seem to stay away from you, even knowing the risk. Naomi shifted, moving around the island until she was standing directly in front of him. Dante's knees spread automatically, making space for her between his legs. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. What if vulnerability isn't a weakness? She said softly. What if it's the only way to actually live instead of just survive? Dante's hands came to rest on her hips, his touch reverent. You make me want to believe that's possible. Then believe it. She was close enough now to see the darker ring around his irises, to count the individual lashes that framed those storm-gray eyes. You don't have to be the monster all the time, Dante. Not with me. What if the monster is all I know how to be? Then I'll teach you something different. Her thumb brushed across his lower lip. If you'll let me. The kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like two currents finally meeting. Dante's hand slid into her hair, cradling the back of her head as his lips found hers. The kiss started soft, almost questioning, but quickly deepened into something that made Naomi's toes curl. Dante kissed like he fought, with complete focus and devastating precision. His mouth moved over hers with a hunger that should have frightened her, but instead set her blood on fire. Naomi pressed closer, her hands sliding from his face to his shoulders to his back, pulling him into her as if she could merge their bodies through will alone. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. And I don't know how to protect you from what that means. Maybe you don't have to protect me. Naomi's hands framed his face again. Maybe we just figure it out together. You don't understand what you're signing up for. But his arms tightened around her waist. My enemies will see you as a weakness. They'll try to use you against me. Your life will never be completely normal again. Normal is overrated. She kissed him again, softer this time. I'd rather have dangerous and real than safe and empty. Dante pulled back enough to study her face, his expression serious. I need you to understand something. If you do this, if you choose to be with me, I will be possessive. I will be overprotective. I will do things you don't approve of to keep you safe. I won't apologize for that. And I need you to understand something. Naomi's voice was firm. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be wrapped in cotton and hidden away. I can be strong and scared at the same time. I can love you and still call you out when you're being an overbearing ass. I won't lose myself just because I'm choosing you. A slow smile spread across Dante's face, transforming him from dangerous to devastating. You really are something else. Is that a yes? She raised an eyebrow. Can you handle a woman who won't just agree with everything you say? Piccola, I think you might be exactly what I need. He stood, pulling her fully into his arms. Someone who sees the monster and chooses to love the man anyway. I don't see a monster. Naomi's hands rested on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I see someone who's done terrible things, but still has the capacity for tenderness. Someone who's been hurt, but hasn't let it make him cruel. That's not a monster, Dante. That's just human. They moved to the living room, settling on the plush couch in front of the fireplace. Dante pulled Naomi against his side, and they sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, watching the flames dance. "Tell me about your work," Dante finally said. "What's the hardest part?" Naomi thought about the question. "Watching people give up. I have patients sometimes who've been through terrible accidents or illnesses, and they've decided they'll never walk again or move without pain. The hardest part is convincing them that healing is possible when they've lost hope. How do you do it? Small victories, celebrating every tiny improvement, reminding them that healing isn't linear, that setbacks are part of the process." She tilted her head to look up at him. "Kind of like loving someone, I guess. It's not always smooth or easy, but the work is worth it." Dante's arm tightened around her shoulders. "You're comparing healing physical injuries to healing emotional ones? Aren't they similar? Both require patience, dedication, willingness to push through pain to get stronger." She traced patterns on his chest with her finger. "Both require believing that better is possible even when the present is difficult." "You think I can be healed?" His voice was carefully neutral, but she heard the vulnerability underneath. "I think everyone can heal if they're willing to do the work." Naomi shifted to face him more fully. "But it has to be your choice, Dante. I can't fix you. No one can fix another person, but I can support you while you fix yourself." "What if I don't want to change who I am?" "Then don't. I'm not asking you to become someone else." Her hand cupped his cheek. "I'm just asking you to consider whether the man you are is the man you want to be. And if the answer is yes, then I'll love that man. If the answer is no, then I'll support you while you become who you want to be." Dante pulled her into another kiss, this one slow and deep and full of promise. When they separated, his eyes were bright with an emotion she was learning to recognize. "Stay," he murmured against her lips. "I'm not asking you to sleep with me. Just stay. Let me hold you while we talk. Let me fall asleep with you in my arms for once instead of miles away on the phone." Naomi knew she should go home, should maintain some boundaries, some separation. But the truth was, she didn't want to. She wanted to stay wrapped in Dante's arms, wanted to fall asleep listening to his heartbeat, wanted to wake up and see his face in the morning light. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Dante carried her to his bedroom, which was surprisingly simple for a man of his wealth. A massive bed dominated the space, but the room itself was uncluttered and peaceful. He gave her one of his shirts to sleep in, turning his back while she changed with an old-fashioned courtesy that made her smile. When they finally settled into bed, Dante pulled Naomi against his chest, her back to his front, his arm draped protectively over her waist, and she could feel his breath stirring her hair. "Thank you," he said quietly into the darkness. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not my reputation or my power or my sins. Just me." Naomi laced her fingers through his, pulling his arm tighter around her. "Thank you for letting me." They fell asleep like that, two people from different worlds finding unexpected peace in each other's arms. Naomi woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she was disoriented, then memory flooded back. Dante's house, Dante's bed, Dante. She found him in the kitchen, shirtless and perfect in the morning light, making what looked like pancakes. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the smile that spread across his face made her heart skip. "Good morning, Bellissima." He held out a cup of coffee, prepared exactly how she liked it, even though she'd never told him. But then again, they'd talked about everything during their late-night phone calls. Of course he knew. "Good morning." She accepted the coffee, taking a grateful sip. "You didn't have to make breakfast." "I wanted to." He flipped a pancake with casual expertise. "Besides, I like taking care of you. It makes me feel almost normal." Naomi hopped up on the counter next to the stove, watching him cook. She was wearing his shirt and nothing else, her natural hair wild from sleep, and she'd never felt more comfortable in her life. "What's your day like?" she asked. Dante's expression darkened slightly. "I have a meeting this afternoon. Business that can't be postponed." "Dangerous business?" "Potentially." He didn't sugarcoat it, which she appreciated. "But I'll have my best people with me. I'll be fine." "Be careful anyway." She reached out, running her hand down his back. "I've gotten used to having you around." He turned, stepping between her knees and bracketing her body with his arms. "I'll always come back to you, Naomi. That's a promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I don't." His lips found hers in a kiss that started sweet and quickly turned heated. "You're mine now, Piccola, and I protect what's mine with my life." They spent the morning together, comfortable in a way that usually took months to develop. Dante drove her home eventually, kissing her thoroughly before letting her go with a promise to call later. Naomi floated through her shift at the hospital, unable to stop smiling. Her co-workers noticed, teasing her about looking like a woman in love. She didn't deny it. How could she, when the truth was written all over her face? But around 3 in the afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood run cold. "Meeting went wrong. Don't worry, bleeding but alive. Will call when I can. D." Her hands shook as she read the message again. Bleeding but alive. What did that mean? How badly was he hurt? Who had hurt him? The next hour was torture. Naomi tried to focus on her patients but kept checking her phone obsessively. Finally, around 4:30, Dante called. "I'm okay," he said before she could even speak. "I promise, I'm okay." "You said you were bleeding." Her voice cracked. "Where are you? What happened?" "I'm at one of my properties. I have a doctor here." He paused, and she heard pain in his voice. "It's not serious. A knife caught my side during negotiations that turned physical. But I've had worse, Piccola. Much worse. I want to see you." The words came out before she could think them through. "I need to see for myself that you're okay." "Naomi, please, please, Dante." She was already grabbing her coat. "Tell me where you are." He gave her the address, and Naomi was in a cab within 5 minutes. The location was a nondescript warehouse in an industrial area, the kind of place she would never normally go. But Marco was waiting outside to escort her in, his expression carefully neutral. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a surprisingly comfortable space. Dante was sitting on a couch, shirtless, while an older man stitched up a nasty gash along his ribs. Blood stained his skin and the white bandages nearby. "Piccola." Dante's face filled with relief and concern when he saw her. "You shouldn't be here." Naomi ignored him, crossing the room to examine the wound herself with professional eyes. The cut was deep but clean, likely from a sharp blade. The doctor was doing excellent work with the stitches. "What happened?" she asked, her fingers ghosting over Dante's unmarked skin near the wound. "A disagreement about territory." He winced as the doctor pulled another stitch through. The Esposito family again. They sent representatives to negotiate, then tried to take me out when negotiations didn't go their way. And the men who did this? Dante's expression went cold. Being dealt with. Naomi should have been horrified, should have run from this world of violence and retribution, but all she could focus on was the wound in Dante's side, the blood on his skin, how close she'd come to losing him before they'd barely begun. "I'm going to take over," she told the doctor, whose name she learned was Romano. "I'll finish the stitching." Romano looked to Dante for confirmation. At Dante's nod, the doctor handed over the supplies and stepped back. Naomi pulled on gloves and studied the wound carefully before continuing the stitches. "You have a gentle touch," Dante murmured, watching her face. "I'm trained for this. Rehabilitation includes a lot of wound care." She worked efficiently, each stitch neat and precise. "This is going to leave a scar. Another one for the collection." His hand came up to cup her face. "You're shaking." "You scared me." Naomi kept her eyes on her work, not trusting herself to look at him. "That text, I thought I was going to lose you." "Hey." Dante caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I'm fine. This is nothing, Bellissima. I've survived much worse." "That doesn't make me feel better." She tied off the final stitch and began bandaging the wound. "It just makes me realize how often you put yourself in danger." "It's my life, Naomi. It's who I am." "I know." She pressed her palm gently against the bandage. "And I'm choosing you anyway, but that doesn't mean I have to like it when you get hurt." Dante pulled her into his lap, careful not to strain his injured side. His arms came around her, solid and warm, and Naomi buried her face in his neck. "I'm sorry I scared you," he said quietly. "I should have called instead of texting." "You should have not gotten stabbed in the first place." His laugh rumbled through his chest. "I'll add that to my to-do list. Number 1, don't get stabbed. Number 2, make sure Naomi knows I'm crazy about her." Naomi pulled back enough to look at him. "You're crazy about me?" "Completely." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Certifiably insane about you. You're all I think about, Naomi. When I'm in meetings, when I'm sleeping, when I'm apparently getting stabbed by rival families, all I could think about was how much I wanted to see your face again." "Dante," her voice broke, "I love you." The words came out fierce and certain. "I know it's too soon. I know I should wait. But I've spent my whole life being careful and measured, and with you, I don't want to be. I love you, Naomi Clarke. And if that scares you, I'm sorry, but I can't keep it inside anymore." Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks. "I love you too. I know I shouldn't. I know this is crazy and dangerous, and possibly the worst decision I've ever made. But I love you." Dante kissed her then, hard and deep, pouring everything he felt into the connection between their lips. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "I'm never letting you go," he whispered. "You're mine now, Piccola, for as long as you'll have me." Forever might not be long enough. Naomi's fingers traced the line of his jaw. But it's a start. Over the next 3 months, Naomi was pulled deeper into Dante's world. She met his most trusted associates, men with hard eyes who softened slightly when they saw how Dante was with her. She learned to navigate the complex politics of organized crime, understanding which questions to ask and which to leave unspoken. But she also maintained her own life, her own work. Dante respected her boundaries, never asking her to give up her career or her independence. Instead, he supported her dreams, surprising her one day with the news that he'd purchased a building in an underserved neighborhood. "For your rehabilitation center," he explained, handing her the deed. "Before you protest, this isn't charity. It's an investment. You'll run it however you want, with complete autonomy. I'm just the silent partner who provides the funding." Naomi had cried, overwhelmed by the gesture and what it meant. Dante understood her, supported her dreams, wanted to help her make a difference in the world even as he navigated his own darkness. Their relationship wasn't always easy. There were nights when Dante came home covered in blood that wasn't his own, and Naomi had to reconcile the gentle man who cooked for her with the ruthless boss who ordered executions. There were days when she questioned whether love was enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. But there were also moments of perfect peace. Sunday mornings making breakfast together, late nights reading in comfortable silence, the way Dante's face lit up when she walked into a room, the feeling of absolute safety she experienced in his arms, even knowing the danger that surrounded them. 6 months after their first meeting, Dante took Naomi back to the alley where they'd collided in the rain. It was a clear night this time, stars visible in the spaces between buildings. "This is where my life changed," Dante said, standing in the exact spot where she'd crashed into him. "This is where I met the woman who made me believe I could be more than a monster." "Dante..." He knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Naomi's hands flew to her mouth. "I know this is crazy," Dante said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we've only known each other 6 months. I know my world is dangerous and unpredictable. But I also know that every day with you is better than any day before you. I know that you've given me hope for a future I thought I'd never have. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life becoming worthy of the love you've shown me." He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring with a deep red stone surrounded by diamonds. "Naomi Clarke, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on this reformed monster? Will you let me spend the rest of our lives proving that love can transform even the darkest soul?" Naomi dropped to her knees in front of him, framing his face with her hands. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Because you're not a monster, Dante. You're just a man who's been through hell and came out fighting. You're a man who protects the vulnerable and punishes the cruel. You're a man who loves with his whole heart, even though it terrifies you. That's not a monster. That's a hero." Dante's eyes were bright with unshed tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "Without you, I'm just a monster," he whispered, echoing the words he'd said to her one night during a particularly dark moment. "But with you, I'm a man trying to be better. Thank you for seeing me, Naomi. Thank you for choosing me." "Always," Naomi promised, sealing the vow with a kiss. The rain started then, soft. At first, then harder, just like the night they'd met. They stood in that alley, holding each other as water poured down around them, and Dante whispered against her lips, "Without you, I'm just a monster." "Then it's a good thing you have me," Naomi replied, "because together, we're unstoppable." Their wedding 3 months later was a blend of their two worlds, Naomi's church family and hospital co-workers mixed with Dante's associates, everyone united in celebrating a love that had transformed 2 lives. Naomi walked down the aisle to her mother's beaming pride, her natural hair styled in intricate braids woven with flowers. When Dante saw her, his carefully maintained composure cracked. Tears streamed down his face as she came closer, and by the time she reached him at the altar, he was openly weeping. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, taking her hands. "So impossibly beautiful." "You're not bad yourself," Naomi replied, her own eyes wet. "Ready to do this?" I've been ready since the moment you crashed into me in the rain. The ceremony was traditional, with one modification. When it came time for vows, Dante produced a piece of paper covered in his elegant handwriting. Naomi, he began, his voice steady despite his tears. You taught me that monsters can become men, that violence doesn't have to define us, that love is stronger than fear, than blood, than all the darkness in the world. You saw past my reputation, past my sins, past the carefully constructed walls I'd built around my heart. You saw me, truly saw me, and you chose to love what you found. He folded the paper, his eyes locked on hers. I promise to spend every day of our lives together becoming the man you see when you look at me. I promise to protect your dreams as fiercely as I protect your body. I promise to honor your strength, your independence, your beautiful spirit that refuses to be diminished by the darkness around us. I promise that my love for you will be the best thing I ever do, the one truly good choice in a life full of moral compromises. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Without you, I'm just a monster. But with you, I'm a man learning what it means to be truly human. Thank you for that gift, amor mio. Thank you for teaching me how to love. Naomi's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. Dante, you didn't save me that night in the alley. We saved each other. You gave me courage to dream bigger, to want more, to believe that love can exist even in the darkest places. You showed me that people are complicated, that good and bad don't exist in simple categories, that everyone deserves a chance at redemption. She reached up to wipe the tears from his cheeks. I choose you, Dante Rossi, not despite your darkness, but because you've shown me that darkness doesn't have to win. I choose you because you make me brave. I choose you because loving you has made me more myself than I've ever been. I choose you because when you look at me, I see reflected in your eyes the woman I want to become. Her voice strengthened. You're not a monster. You're the man I love, and I will spend the rest of our lives reminding you of that whenever you forget. When the priest pronounced them married, Dante kissed Naomi with such tenderness that several guests openly wept. It was a kiss that spoke of promises kept and futures built together, of two souls finding their home in each other. At the reception, Naomi's mother pulled her aside. Are you happy, baby? She asked, studying her daughter's face carefully. More than I ever thought possible, Naomi replied honestly. I know his life isn't conventional, Mama. I know there are dangers and complications. But I love him. And he loves me in a way that makes me feel truly seen. Her mother nodded slowly. I won't pretend I'm not worried. That man lives a dangerous life, but I've also never seen you glow like this. Never seen you so confident in your choices. She pulled Naomi into a tight hug. Be careful, baby, but be happy. You deserve happiness. Later that night, as they swayed together during their first dance, Dante whispered in Naomi's ear, Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being worth believing in, she replied. Their first year of marriage was an adventure. Naomi opened her rehabilitation center, naming it Second Chances after the gift Dante had given her. She hired a talented staff and quickly built a reputation for accepting patients that other facilities turned away. The work was exhausting, but fulfilling, exactly what she'd always dreamed of doing. Dante, for his part, began the slow process of legitimizing his business interests. He couldn't walk away from the family completely, the connections ran too deep, but he started shifting resources toward legal enterprises. Real estate development, particularly in underserved communities, investments in local businesses, charitable foundations that provided real help to people in need. You're changing me, he told Naomi one night as they reviewed proposals for a new community center. Making me want to build instead of just control. You were always capable of this, she replied, pressing a kiss to his temple. You just needed a reason to try. But their happiness was shattered on a cold February evening when Naomi was working late at the center. She was alone in her office, reviewing patient files, when she heard the front door open. Assuming it was the night security guard, she called out a greeting. The man who appeared in her doorway wasn't the security guard. He was tall and thin, with cold eyes and a gun pointed directly at her chest. Naomi's heart stopped. Mrs. Rossi. His voice was flat, emotionless. You're going to come with me. Who are you? Naomi forced herself to remain calm, her mind racing through options. A messenger. He gestured with the gun. Walk, try to run, and I'll shoot you in the leg. Try to call for help, and I'll shoot you in the shoulder. Cooperate, and you might survive this. Naomi stood slowly, her hands raised. As she moved toward the door, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The man grabbed it, glancing at the screen. Dante calling. He smiled coldly. Let's let him know where we're going, shall we? He answered the phone, holding it so Naomi could see but not speak. Rossi. The man's voice was conversational. We have your wife. If you want to see her alive again, you'll meet us at the old shipping yard on the waterfront. Alone. 1 hour. He ended the call before Dante could respond, then smashed the phone under his heel. Move. The shipping yard was exactly as threatening as it sounded. Abandoned containers created a maze of shadows, and the smell of salt water and rust hung heavy in the air. The man pushed Naomi into the center of a clearing, where 3 other men waited. One of them, clearly the leader, smiled when he saw her. The famous Mrs. Rossi. He circled her slowly. You're prettier than the photos. I can see why Dante broke all his rules for you. What do you want? Naomi kept her voice steady despite her terror. I want Dante Rossi to suffer. The man stopped in front of her. He killed my brother, took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from him, starting with you. Killing me won't hurt him the way you think. Naomi met his eyes. It'll just turn him into the monster you claim he is. Good. The man's smile widened. I want him to become the monster. I want him to burn the city down looking for revenge. I want him to destroy everything he's built trying to make me pay. And when he's lost everything, when he's truly alone, then I'll kill him too. A car engine sounded in the distance. The leader nodded to his men, who melted into the shadows. He pressed a gun to Naomi's temple. Remember, he whispered in her ear. You're bait, not the target. Behave, and this can be over quickly. Dante's Mercedes pulled into the clearing, and Naomi's heart broke at how fast he moved. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, his eyes finding hers immediately. Let her go, Esposito. Dante's voice was deadly calm. This is between you and me. So this was Marco Esposito, the brother of the man Dante had killed, the head of the family that had been hunting them for months. That's where you're wrong, Rossi. Marco pressed the gun harder against Naomi's head. This is about taking everything from you like you took everything from me. Your brother was trafficking women, Marco. Children. I did what needed to be done. He was my brother. Marco's composure cracked. My family, and you murdered him. I'd do it again. Dante took a step forward. But Naomi has nothing to do with this. Let her go, and I'll give you what you want. My life for hers. No. Naomi struggled against Marco's hold. Dante, don't... Shh, Piccola. Dante's eyes found hers, and she saw love and apology and acceptance in their depths. It's okay. This is my fault, my world, my consequences. How touching. Marco's voice dripped with sarcasm. The monster learns to love. Too bad it's going to get you both killed. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Marco's finger tightened on the trigger. Dante lunged forward with inhuman speed. Gunshots rang out, not from Marco's gun, but from the shadows where his men had been hiding. Dante's security team, who had been trailing him at a distance, emerged firing. The clearing erupted into chaos. Marco spun, bringing his gun around toward Dante. Naomi acted on instinct, throwing her weight backward and twisting. Marco's shot went wide. Dante was on him in seconds, the two men grappling for the weapon. More gunshots, more shouting. Naomi stayed low, watching in horror as Dante fought Marco with brutal efficiency. The gun went flying. Dante's fist connected with Marco's face once, twice, 3 times. Marco crumpled. When the shooting stopped, 4 of Marco's men were dead or incapacitated. Marco himself was unconscious on the ground. And Dante was standing over Marco's body, his chest heaving, blood on his knuckles. For a moment, Naomi saw the monster everyone else saw, the ruthless killer who showed no mercy. Then Dante's eyes found hers, and everything else fell away. He crossed the clearing in long strides, pulling her into his arms with such force it knocked the air from her lungs. His hands ran over her frantically, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Naomi, talk to me. I'm okay." She clung to him just as tightly. "I'm okay, Dante. You came for me." "Always." His voice broke. "Always, Bellissima. I will always come for you." They stood there in the midst of violence and death, holding each other like drowning people clutching at lifelines. Around them, Dante's men secured the scene, calling in cleanup crews and liaisons with the corrupted police who looked the other way for the right price. But Naomi only had eyes for Dante, for the man who had just risked everything to save her, who had been willing to die for her. "I'm sorry," Dante whispered against her hair. "I'm so sorry you were pulled into this, that my past came for you." "Stop!" Naomi pulled back enough to look at him. "Stop apologizing for being who you are. I knew what I was signing up for when I married you." "You didn't know it would be like this." His hands cupped her face. "You didn't know there would be men with guns threatening to kill you to hurt me." "No," she agreed. "I didn't, but I also didn't know how it would feel to be loved this completely, to have someone willing to sacrifice everything for me, to build a life with someone who sees my dreams as important as his own." She pressed her forehead to his. "The danger is part of the package, Dante. I accept that. I don't want you to have to accept it." His voice was raw. "I want to give you a safe, normal life." "Then you'd be someone else." Naomi's thumbs wiped away the tears on his cheeks. "And I didn't fall in love with someone else. I fell in love with you, Dante Rossi. All of you. The good, the bad, the dangerous, the tender. You don't get to decide which parts of yourself I'm allowed to love." Dante kissed her then, hard and desperate, pouring all his fear and relief and love into the connection between their lips. When they finally separated, he rested his forehead against hers. "Without you, I'm just a monster," he whispered, repeating the words that had become their private vow. "Then it's a good thing you have me," Naomi replied, just as she had that night in the rain. "Because together, we're unstoppable." The aftermath of Marco Esposito's attempted kidnapping sent ripples through the city's underworld. Dante's response was swift and brutal. The Esposito family was dismantled, their territories absorbed, their leadership scattered or imprisoned. It was a message to anyone else who might consider targeting Naomi. She was under Dante Rossi's protection, and crossing that line meant total annihilation. But the incident had shaken Naomi more than she wanted to admit. For weeks afterward, she jumped at unexpected sounds, checked over her shoulder constantly, struggled with nightmares of cold guns pressed to her temple. Dante held her through the worst of it, patient and gentle even as she could see the guilt eating at him. "This is my fault," he said one night after she woke screaming from another nightmare. "You're suffering because of who I am, what I've done." "Stop." Naomi pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. "Stop blaming yourself. Marco Esposito made his choice. You made yours. I made mine. We all own our decisions. But you're paying the price for mine. And reaping the rewards, too." She shifted closer, needing his warmth. "Yes, I'm struggling. Yes, this was traumatic. But I'm still here, Dante. I'm still choosing you. That hasn't changed." Dante insisted she see a therapist who specialized in trauma. Dr. Sarah Chen was a calm woman in her 50s who'd worked with victims of violence for 20 years. Over months of sessions, Naomi processed what had happened, learned coping strategies, gradually reclaimed her sense of safety. But Dante also made changes. He increased security at Naomi's rehabilitation center, hiring trained professionals who could blend into the background. Former military and intelligence operatives who looked like regular staff, but were trained to neutralize threats. He had the building's security system completely overhauled, adding cameras, reinforced locks, panic buttons in every room. "It's a lot," Naomi said when she saw the extent of the new measures. "The center looks like Fort Knox." "Good." Dante's expression was unyielding. "I won't risk your safety again. Ever." He also insisted on teaching her self-defense. They converted one of the spare rooms in their house into a training space, and Dante spent hours teaching her basic techniques, how to break a grip on her wrist, how to use an attacker's momentum against them, where to strike to disable someone long enough to run. "I don't want you to fight," Dante said during one session, correcting her stance. "I want you to escape. That's all these moves are for. Buying you time to get away and call for help." Naomi worked hard, pushing through the frustration of learning new skills. Dante was patient but demanding, never letting her slack off or make excuses. After 3 months, she could competently defend herself against a single attacker long enough to create distance and run. "I'm proud of you," Dante said after a particularly intense training session. "You're stronger than you think." "I'm strong because you make me feel safe enough to be strong." Naomi wiped sweat from her face. "That's what love does, right? Makes us braver than we'd be alone." And most importantly, Dante redoubled his efforts to legitimize his operations. He met with lawyers, accountants, business consultants. He started divesting from the more criminal aspects of his empire, investing instead in legitimate businesses, real estate development in underserved neighborhoods, venture capital for minority-owned startups, a charitable foundation that provided real resources to communities in need. "I can't walk away completely," he told Naomi one night as they reviewed business proposals together. "The connections are too deep, the obligations too binding. There are people who depend on the family, traditions that go back generations, but I can minimize the danger. I can build something better for us, for any children we might have." Naomi's hand drifted to her stomach, where their first child was just beginning to grow. They'd discovered the pregnancy 2 weeks after the kidnapping, an unexpected joy that made them both cry. Naomi had feared the trauma might make her lose the baby, but her body proved resilient, the pregnancy progressing normally despite the stress. "Our daughter won't grow up in fear," Dante continued, his hand covering hers on her belly. "I'll make sure of it. She'll have security, yes, but also freedom. the ability to pursue her dreams without constantly looking over her shoulder. Our son, Naomi corrected with a smile. The same debate they'd been having for weeks. And he won't grow up in fear because he'll have parents who love him, who will teach him to be strong and kind in equal measure. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. We refuse to find out, remember? Mother's intuition. She kissed his jaw. Trust me. It's a boy with your eyes and your stubborn streak. The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Naomi's initial fears. Dante was attentive to the point of being overbearing, hovering whenever she felt tired, insisting she rest more than necessary, reading every pregnancy book he could find. He attended every doctor's appointment, held her hand during every ultrasound, cried the first time they heard their baby's heartbeat. "I can't believe we made this," he whispered, staring at the ultrasound image like it held the secrets of the universe. Something so perfect, so innocent. "We made him from love," Naomi said, emotion thick in her throat. "That's the best foundation anyone could have." 8 months later, when Naomi went into labor in the middle of a thunderstorm, Dante transformed into someone she barely recognized. The calm, controlled man she knew became frantic and worried, pacing the hospital room like a caged animal while she breathed through contractions. "You need to calm down," Naomi said between pains, somehow managing to smile at his obvious panic. "You're stressing me out." "I'm sorry, Dante ran his hands through his hair. "What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you? I can't, Naomi. I can't lose you." "You won't." She held out her hand, and he took it immediately. "I'm strong, remember? You taught me that. This is just another challenge we're facing together." The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Dante never left her side, holding her hand through every contraction, breathing with her, offering ice chips and encouraging words. When the pain became unbearable and she screamed that she couldn't do this anymore, he cupped her face in his hands and made her look at him. "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "You're the strongest person I know, Naomi. You survived my world, survived being kidnapped, survived falling in love with a monster. You can do this. I believe in you." His absolute certainty gave her strength. When their son finally entered the world with a piercing cry, Naomi sobbed with relief and exhaustion and overwhelming love. The nurse placed the baby on her chest, and Naomi looked down at the tiny, perfect human they'd created. He had Dante's storm gray eyes and a beautiful blend of both their features. His skin was a warm brown, his hair dark and thick, his fingers impossibly small as they gripped Naomi's thumb. "He's perfect," Naomi whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely perfect, Dante." When Dante held his son for the first time minutes later, Naomi saw the final transformation complete. The feared Mafia boss, the ruthless criminal, the man who'd killed without mercy, all of that fell away, leaving only a father overwhelmed by love for his child. "He's so small," Dante breathed, his hands impossibly gentle as he cradled the baby. "So fragile. How does something this perfect exist in such a harsh world?" "We'll protect him," Naomi said, exhausted but certain. "Together, we'll make sure he grows up surrounded by love." "We're naming him Michael," Naomi said from the hospital bed. "After your mother's father, your nonno Michel." Dante looked up from the baby, tears streaming freely down his face. "You remembered." "I remember everything you've told me." She smiled through her own tears. "He deserves to carry that legacy. Your grandfather was a good man," you said. "A carpenter who built homes for people who couldn't afford them. Michael will carry that spirit of creating and helping others." "Michel Antonio Rossi," Dante said softly, testing the name. The baby made a small sound, as if approving the choice. He's going to be better than me. I'll make sure of it. He's going to be like you, Naomi corrected, strong and protective and capable of incredible tenderness. That's the legacy you'll give him, Dante. Not your darkness, but your capacity to love despite it. 5 years later, Naomi stood in the rain outside Second Chance's Rehabilitation Center, watching as they unveiled the sign for the new wing. The expansion had been Dante's idea, a way to serve even more patients and provide cutting-edge treatment to those who couldn't afford it elsewhere. The building had grown from a modest facility to a comprehensive rehabilitation complex. The new wing housed state-of-the-art equipment, hydrotherapy pools, specialized treatment rooms for every type of physical therapy imaginable. They'd also added a community center with free fitness classes, nutritional counseling, and support groups for families of patients. Michael, now a rambunctious 5-year-old with his father's intensity and his mother's compassionate heart, held Dante's hand while his little sister Sophia, barely 3 with her mother's warm skin and expressive eyes, sat on Dante's shoulders. Their family had grown, their love deepening with each passing year, expanding to encompass these 2 perfect humans they'd created together. "Mama, when can we see inside?" Michael tugged on Naomi's dress, his excitement palpable. "Papa said there's a pool. Can I swim in it?" "It's for patients, tesoro," Dante explained patiently, using the Italian endearment he'd taught both children. "People who are healing from injuries, but maybe we can arrange a special visit where you can see how we help people feel better." "Like what Mama does?" Sophia asked, her small voice clear despite the rain. "Exactly like what Mama does." Dante shifted her weight on his shoulders. "Your mother is a hero, Piccola. She helps people walk again, makes their pain go away, teaches them to be strong." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes at the pride in his voice. This man who'd once believed he was nothing but a monster, now spoke of her work with such reverence, raised their children to understand the value of helping others, had become the kind of father she'd always hoped for but never dared to expect. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was simple, but moving. Naomi spoke about the center's mission, about the hundreds of patients they'd served over the past 5 years, about the lives transformed through dedication and care. She thanked her staff, acknowledged the donors who'd made the expansion possible, and caught Dante's eye across the crowd. He stood at the back with their children, deliberately staying out of the spotlight. But the expression on his face told her everything: pride, love, absolute devotion. This was his gift to her, his way of supporting her dreams while staying in the shadows where he was most comfortable. After the ceremony, as guests toured the new facility, Naomi found a quiet moment alone with Dante on the balcony overlooking the city. The children were with Dante's cousin Maria, who'd become like an aunt to them, giving their parents a rare moment of privacy. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they watched the rain-soaked city lights below. "That night we met." Naomi leaned back against his solid warmth. "When I crashed into you right here, a few blocks from this very spot, I was so focused on avoiding puddles that I didn't see you until impact." "Best collision of my life." Dante's lips brushed her temple. "I thought you were just another woman caught in the storm. I had no idea you were about to become my entire world." "Did you know then?" Naomi turned in his arms to face him. "In that moment, did you feel it?" "Feel what?" "That everything was about to change. That you'd just met the person who would reshape your entire existence." Dante considered the question seriously, his gray eyes thoughtful in the dim light. "No, not immediately. But when I caught you, when I looked into your eyes, I felt something shift. Like the universe had just rearranged itself around you. And when you smiled at me, even soaked and embarrassed, I thought I'd never seen anything more beautiful. I was terrified of you, Naomi admitted. After I learned who you were, I spent that whole first night after we met researching your name, reading articles about your family, trying to understand what I'd stumbled into. Why didn't you run? His hands framed her face. Any sane person would have blocked my number, moved apartments, done everything possible to avoid crossing paths again. Because terrified isn't the same as scared away. She covered his hands with hers. I was terrified of what you represented, of the danger your world implied. But I wasn't scared of you, Dante. Even in that alley with men attacking, even when I saw you fight with such brutal efficiency, I never once felt threatened by you personally. You should have been. His voice was rough with old guilt. I was dangerous then, Piccola, more than you knew. I'd killed people the week before we met, made decisions that resulted in deaths. My hands were covered in blood, metaphorically speaking. But they were also gentle when they steadied me. Naomi's thumbs traced the familiar lines of his face. Also protective when they pushed me behind you. Also tender when they held mine while we talked on the phone until dawn. You were never just one thing, Dante. You were always this beautiful contradiction, capable of violence but choosing tenderness, hardened by experience but remaining vulnerable with me. We changed each other. Dante pulled her closer, until there was no space between their bodies. That's what love does. You didn't fix me, and I didn't complete you. We were both whole people who became better versions of ourselves by choosing each other. The rain picked up, heavier now, drumming on the balcony awning with rhythmic intensity. It reminded Naomi of that first night, of standing in the alley with Dante's umbrella over her head, feeling the first stirrings of something that would grow into this all-consuming love. Do you ever regret it? Dante asked, voicing the question she knew haunted him. Choosing this life, choosing me, the danger, the close calls, the compromises you've had to make? Naomi pulled back enough to look directly into his eyes, wanting him to see the absolute truth in her expression. Never. Not once. Not even for a second. Even during the worst moments, when Marco had that gun to my head, when I was processing the trauma afterward, when I wake up from nightmares, I have never once regretted choosing you. How? The word came out broken. How can you not regret being endangered because of me? Because everything worth having comes with risk, Dante. She brushed rain from his cheek tenderly. Yes, loving you exposed me to danger I never would have faced otherwise, but it also gave me joy I never knew existed. It gave me you, gave me our children, gave me this life we've built together. The danger is real, but so is everything beautiful we've created. Dante's arms tightened around her waist. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Not because of physical strength or self-defense skills, but because of your capacity to love fully despite knowing the risks. That takes a courage I'll never fully understand. And you're not the monster you think you are. Naomi's voice was firm. You're a man who's done terrible things in pursuit of survival and power, yes. But you're also a man who freed trafficked women, who builds community centers in poor neighborhoods, who holds our daughter while she sleeps and reads bedtime stories to our son. You're not one or the other, Dante. You're both, and I love all of you. They stood together in the rain, holding each other as the city sparkled below them. 5 years of marriage, 7 years since that first meeting, countless moments of joy and fear and love woven together into a life neither of them could have imagined, but both had fought to build. I need to tell you something, Dante said after a long moment of comfortable silence. Something I've been working on but wanted to be sure about before sharing. You're making me nervous. But Naomi smiled, trusting him completely. I'm stepping back from the family business. Not completely, I'll never be able to fully walk away. But I've been transitioning leadership to my cousin Antonio. He's ruthless enough to maintain control, but also smart enough to continue the legitimization process I started. Dante's hands moved to cradle her face. In 6 months, my primary role will be as CEO of Rossi Development Corporation. Legal, above board, safe. Naomi felt her breath catch. Dante, are you sure? Your family has been in this for generations. And maybe it's time for our generation to be different. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. I want Michael and Sophia to grow up with a father they can be proud of without reservations. I want you to stop worrying every time I leave for a meeting. I want to build something clean that our children can inherit without the weight of blood money. This is because of what happened with Marco, isn't it? Partly. He didn't deny it. Seeing you with that gun to your head, knowing I'd put you in danger just by loving you, that changed something fundamental in me, Naomi. I realized that protecting you meant changing my world, not just trying to shield you from it. Tears streamed down Naomi's face, mixing with the rain. I love you. God, Dante, I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes. I love you too, Bellissima. More than my life, more than anything. He kissed her softly, then deeper, pouring 7 years of devotion into the connection between their lips. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for seeing the man instead of the monster. Later that evening, after the children were asleep and they'd settled onto their couch with glasses of wine, Dante pulled Naomi into his arms. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Choosing this life? Choosing me? Naomi twisted to look at him, her expression fierce. Never. Not once, not even for a second. Even with the danger, the close calls, the times when my past comes back to threaten our future? Especially then. She cupped his face in her hands. Because every time we face danger, every time we overcome an obstacle, we prove that love is stronger than fear, that we're stronger together than we ever were apart. Dante pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. I love you, Naomi Rossi. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything. I love you too. She pressed a kiss to his jaw. My reformed monster. Without you, I'm just a monster, he whispered against her lips, the words that had become their mantra. Then it's a good thing you have me, Naomi replied, sealing the vow with a kiss that tasted like rain and promise, and forever. Outside, the storm that had been building all day finally broke. Rain poured down in sheets, just like that first night they'd met. But inside their home, wrapped in each other's arms with their children safe upstairs, Naomi and Dante had found their own kind of peace. They'd built a life from dangerous beginnings, created beauty from darkness, proven that love could transform even the most unlikely hearts. Their story wasn't conventional. It wasn't always safe, but it was theirs, written in rain and blood and devotion that nothing could break. And as Dante held Naomi close, listening to the storm rage outside, he knew with absolute certainty that she'd saved him in every way a person could be saved. She'd seen the monster and loved the man. She'd taken his darkness and shown him light. She'd made him believe that redemption was possible, that he deserved happiness, that love was worth any risk. Thank you, he whispered into the darkness, for seeing me, for choosing me. for making me want to be better than I am." "You are better," Naomi murmured sleepily. "You just needed someone to believe it first." They fell asleep like that, tangled together on the couch, the rain their lullaby. Two people from different worlds who'd found their home in each other's arms. A monster who'd learned to be a man, a woman who'd taught him how. Their love story wasn't perfect, but it was real and powerful and true. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Because without each other, they were just two people trying to survive in a harsh world. But together they were unstoppable. Together they were home.